Hi and welcome to my video on the concept of curriculum and its effect on teaching and learning. My name is Sarah Moss and I'm a pre-service secondary school teacher studying at Southern Cross University. Over the next 15 minutes or so, I will take you on a journey discussing the two main issues surrounding the concept of curriculum. First, I will look at effective teaching and learning, giving you a clear understanding of what is effective teaching and what is not. Also, how good teaching is the single most effective way we can increase student learning. I will then take you through valid knowledge and its effect on curriculum development, along with the other influences on curriculum. As you can see, there are two learning outcomes for this lesson. First, you'll be able to explain what is meant by effective teaching after this short video lesson. Second, you'll be able to explain the premise of valid knowledge in society and the many influences on curriculum development. Now, before we begin, I have a little clip to watch. It's 1950s footage of a teacher scolding a class for their poor maths results. Now, this type of teacher is very reminiscent of many people's perceptions of teachers. Not because we all went to school in the 50s, but because most of us can remember sitting in a class that looks very much like this one, being told off in a very similar way. Maybe just with a little bit of colour.
Mr. Grimes, mathematics teacher, is displeased with the progress of his 9th grade class in mathematics.
You see what low grade you made on your weekly mathematics test? More than half of you failed. Most of those who passed just got by. Nobody had 100%. This is the poorest class I've had in a long, long time. Most of you have no foundation at all. Now, the trouble's with your attitude. You don't pay enough attention in class. You don't do enough work outside of it. You don't know what the word study means. You haven't the slightest idea. Don't you realize that mathematics is an important subject? I tell you right now that unless you get over your lazy habits and come up to the standards I've set for this class, many of you will have the pleasure of repeating this course next semester. Well, what is it?
So, if that is very similar to our school experiences, and we didn't grow up in the 1950s, that goes to say that education hasn't changed much since then. So the world is a very different place, but our schools have stayed the same, meeting the needs of an industrial economic climate? That doesn't make sense to me, and I'm sure it doesn't to you either. Many scholars and researchers, including the likes of Bill Gates, argue that the current economic climate only provides opportunity for those people who get a good education, and that the key to a good education is good teachers. So what is good teaching and learning? How do we recognise it? In contrast to the previous clip, here is another short clip discussing effective teachers. Think about the difference in the teaching styles and what is required of a teacher in today's world.
Interactive,
Nice.
Caring,
dedicated,
concerned,
likable, and personable.
amazing.
Well, good teachers are helpful. Great.
As that second clip implied, there are many definitions of effective teachers and teaching. It is quite often dependent upon the learner's personal experiences. But the majority of research done by people such as John Hattie, Pierre Perard, and the Australian Society for Evidence-Based Teaching suggests that there are some qualities that are universal around the world to represent effective teaching strategies. These are just 7 of the many qualities of good teachers. It would be a good idea to jot these down for your own further research. First of all, you have best practice. Now that is ensuring teacher pedagogy is evidence-based. Secondly, you want to maximise your feedback. Now that's both feedback to students and feedback to teachers about their teaching strengths and weaknesses. You want to invest in your students. It is vital for a student to feel like they are worthy. If they see you putting an extra time and effort into them, they're more likely to put more time and effort into themselves. You want to ensure your teaching is informed. Similar to best practice, but more ensuring that teaching plans and class curriculums are developed using appropriate student data. And along similar lines, you must prepare purposefully. Ensure each lesson has a set goals and outcomes. And make sure you set ambitious goals for your students. Expect more and get more. But make sure you can measure those goals. Now, there is no point if you can't define when a goal is achieved. And most importantly, you must believe in your students, especially when they don't believe in themselves, because you might be the only one who does. According to John Hattie, Professor of Education and Director of Melbourne Education Research Institute at Melbourne University, the biggest variance in student outcomes that we can actually affect is teacher expertise. He argues that the issues surrounding education that get debated by the public, politicians and media alike, such as distance ed, class sizes and religious schools, do not make any significant difference to students' school achievement. He argues that there is a direct link between the previous attributes discussed and student success. And isn't student success the number one reason we're all here studying education? Great. So far we have looked at how to recognise effective teaching and its advantageous effect on learning. Now, we're going to look at what the teacher is expected to actually teach, curriculum, and how it is constructed through the idea of valid knowledge and its many influences. To begin, you are all aware of the different types of curriculum. The core curriculum, which is most commonly developed by overarching bodies such as the CARA here in Australia, and is often referred to as syllabi. The school curriculum, which is courses of study broken into KLAs and units of study within individual schools, and the classroom curriculum, which is the individual lessons and units that a teacher prepares for their classes. In a later lesson, we will look at how this government-developed core curriculum is the focus of students' learning at school. But now, I will talk you through its main influences. To understand the influences on curriculum, you need to understand the concept of valid knowledge, which is the premise of curriculum. Valid knowledge is in itself curriculum. Valid knowledge is the knowledge in which society deem as essential or required in life. This thus becomes the curriculum prescribed to be taught in schools, though it has been hotly debated what is essential knowledge and who gets to decide. You need to know two things to understand the relationship between valid knowledge and curriculum. The first is that valid knowledge within society is what constitutes the curriculum, and it's political in nature. The second is that valid knowledge is shaped on both individual and societal factors. What does one need to know to benefit oneself, and what does one need to know to function in society? There are a lot of pressure on curriculum developers to get it right, because we need to teach our kids the skills and knowledge they need to succeed in the 21st century. But many argue that the basics of reading, writing and arithmetic that has been the focus for all of schooling are still the most valid knowledge, and that is what needs to be taught, while others argue that the most valid knowledge are actually these 21st century skills like autonomy, inquiry learning, divergent thinking, collaboration, and customized learning. I'm now going to show you the beginning of a TED Talk by Kayla Shear, who is a secondary teacher in the US who believes that teaching students with inquiry learning to fuel a meaningful learning experiences is how we teach them to take control of their own learning experience. That is the way of the future. She is clearly someone who stands on the pro side of the 21st century skills debate.
Kayla Shear.
Imagine a kid opening up his first smartphone. He's ripping off the paper faster than you can catch it on camera, and he pulls it out because he doesn't know how to turn it on. That's not the reality. He turns it on, he's working Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook within moments, and he's teaching you how to do more on your phone. So my question today is, why are we still teaching our students with the owner's manual? Are we creating mysteries they're captivated to solve? Are we letting our students play? Because if we do, and we use technology, then they are going to have learner autonomy, higher retention, and build these trendy 21st century skills that we're always talking about.
We have discussed how hotly debated the topic of what valid knowledge is in the 21st century classroom, and this leads us to the other influences on curriculum. Now, curriculum is political because the idea of what should or shouldn't be taught is highly debated and a political topic of discussion. Secondly, the economic prosperity of a country comes into question in the development of curriculum, as it is vital, well, some say it is vital, that the education of our youth will lead and should lead to a more prosperous country, though it is often argued that the current education system leads to the unequal distribution of power, goods and services within society. Thirdly, the epistemological influence on curriculum flows in trend with the current scientific research and theories on how our brain works and how we learn. This is an area that has gained more influence in recent years. Also, historical influences are paramount because it is very difficult for anyone to decide what past knowledge is still relevant today and what is not. Also, what is technically possible influences curriculum in the form of pedagogical influences. This is an area of much interest in recent years, as the possibilities within class, thanks to technology, are almost endless. And finally, ideological influences come into play as everyone in society has their own ideals, opinions, and beliefs about what should be taught. Due to this, curriculum is often about developing and interpreting the ideals of a greater society rather than the smaller groups. I now put this question to you. Is there another way to develop this core curriculum? Is the way we do it now the best way? Should there be another way? This is a very difficult question to answer and will need its own presentation. So, just try and think about your answer. And do you think that your answer is in line with others in your life or in the education system? Where do you think your answer fits within society? So today I've discussed effective teaching and its impact on student learning and given you many examples of effective teaching strategies, along with showing you an example of very ineffective teaching. This has led to the conclusion that teacher expertise is the way in which we need to revolutionise the education system, because as explained by John Hattie, and all the things that get debated in the media and by politicians do not actually have any significant effect on student learning. The only thing that does is the effectiveness of teachers. I then talked you through the premise of valid knowledge and its relationship with curriculum and curriculum development, and we then went through the 6 influences of curriculum and the many influences on curriculum development: political, economic, epistemological, historical, pedagogical, and ideological. We then finished with the question of whether our current system of curriculum development is the most beneficial or appropriate to the 21st century classroom. I will now leave you with an excerpt from a TED Talk titled "Bring on the Learning Revolution" by Sir Ken Robinson. He is a renowned expert in education, and if you don't know who he is, look him up. He gives some incredible insight into the changes he believes are necessary in education and curriculum development.
The reason so many people are opting out of education is because it doesn't feed their spirit. It doesn't feed their energy or their passion. So I think we have to change metaphors. We have to go from what is essentially an industrial model of education, a manufacturing model, which is based on linearity and conformity and batching people. We have to move to a model that is based more on principles of agriculture. We have to recognize that human flourishing is not a mechanical process, it's an organic process. And you cannot predict the outcome of human development. All you can do is, like a farmer, is create the conditions under which they will begin to flourish. So when we look at reforming education and transforming it, it isn't like cloning a system. There are great ones, like KIPS, it's a great system. There are many great models. It's about customizing them to your circumstances and personalizing education to the people you're actually teaching. And doing that, I think, is the answer to the future, because it's not about scaling a new solution. It's about creating a movement in education in which people develop their own solutions, but with external support based on a personalized curriculum. Now, in this